The night sky burned with strange colors as the tiny alien girl ran through the dark forest. Her feet were small, her breathing fast, and her wide silver eyes were full of fear. She had never been this far from her tribe. The crash of her damaged escape pod still echoed in her mind. Smoke had followed her, and then silence. Only silence. She kept whispering to herself in her own language. Please, don't let the monsters find me. Please, don't let them eat me. All her life, she had been told one thing about humans. They were beasts. They killed without reason. They hunted smaller races like animals. For her people, humans were the ultimate nightmare. And now, she had landed on their world. Every sound in the forest made her heart race. The crack of a branch, the wind brushing leaves, the hoot of a strange bird. It all sounded like death creeping closer. Her thin arms hugged herself tightly as she hid behind a tree, shaking. She thought about her mother, her father, her tribe who had been scattered when enemy ships attacked them. Was she the only one left? Then she heard it. Footsteps, heavy, slow, and terrifying. She pressed her back against the tree, her breath stuck in her throat. The ground seemed to tremble with every step. Something big was coming, something human. She dared to peek around the trunk and saw him. A human. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing dark armor that reflected the moonlight. A strange weapon hung from his side. His face looked rough, with scars across his cheek, and his eyes searched the ground like those of a hunter. The alien girl's tiny heart almost stopped. It's true, she thought. They are beasts. He will eat me. She tried to run, but her small foot hit a root, and she fell forward with a cry. The soldier turned instantly, his head snapped toward her and his eyes locked on her small glowing form. She froze. The forest went silent. He began to move toward her, slow, steady, like a predator approaching prey. No, please don't eat me, she cried, though she knew he couldn't understand her words. The human stopped just a few feet away. His shadow fell over her. His weapon stayed at his side, but his hand hovered near it. His eyes narrowed, studying her like a puzzle he could not solve. The alien girl shook violently, covering her face with her hands. She expected claws. She expected teeth. She expected pain. But nothing came. Instead, she heard a sound she did not expect. A calm, low voice. It's okay, the human said softly. His voice was deep, but not cruel. I won't hurt you. She didn't understand his language, but something in his tone made her pause. Slowly, she lowered her hands and looked up at him. His eyes were not like the eyes of a beast. They were tired, maybe even gentle. The soldier crouched down, moving carefully so she wouldn't panic. He reached into a small pouch at his belt and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He placed it on the ground between them. The alien girl leaned forward just a little, curiosity mixing with fear. The human opened the cloth to reveal food, simple bread, broken into pieces. He pushed it toward her. Her stomach ached with hunger, but her mind screamed that it was a trap. If I eat it, he will catch me. If I touch it, I will never be free. The human didn't move closer. He simply placed the food down and waited. His eyes never left hers. The night was cold. The forest was quiet again. The alien girl trembled, torn between fear and hunger. One thought echoed again and again inside her small head. Please don't eat me, please. And yet deep inside, another whisper began to rise. What if he is not a beast? The alien girl stared at the food lying on the ground. The bread looked strange, rough, and not like the soft fruit of her homeworld. She could smell it, warm and dry, and her stomach made a weak sound. Still, she did not move. She kept her wide silver eyes fixed on the human. The human stayed crouched, silent. His armor made a faint noise when he shifted his weight, but he did not try to touch her. He seemed patient, like he had all the time in the world. The girl thought, why is he waiting? Beasts never wait. Beasts attack. Minutes passed, and the cold night air wrapped around her like ice. She shivered. Her thin skin glowed faintly under the moonlight, betraying her fear. She wanted to run, but her body was too weak from hunger. Finally, her small hand stretched forward, trembling. She picked up one piece of bread, sniffed it, and took the tiniest bite. The taste was strange, dry and heavy, but not poisonous. Her stomach accepted it, and she quickly ate the rest. The human did not move. His eyes softened when he saw her eat, and for a brief moment his scarred face almost looked kind. The girl licked the crumbs from her lips and whispered in her language, "Not poison. Not yet." The human spoke again, his deep voice calm. She could not understand his words, but his tone was not cruel. "You're just a child," he said. "What are you doing out here?" The alien tilted her head. His words were strange sounds like the rustle of leaves, but the way he spoke made her less afraid. She hugged her knees, still cautious. The human slowly pointed at himself. "John," he said. His finger tapped his chest. "John." The alien blinked. She did not know what the sound meant, but then she remembered the stories her elders told. Humans give names, beasts do not. She pointed a trembling finger at herself. "Leary," she whispered. Her voice was soft, like a falling leaf. John gaw, via small nod. "Leary," he repeated, as if tasting the sound. Her eyes widened. "He said my name. He understands me?" Not fully, but somehow, a bridge had formed. Suddenly, a sound shattered the fragile moment. Branches cracked in the distance. Heavy boots, many of them, marched through the forest. Voices carried through the trees, other humans. Leary gasped and crawled backward, terror flooding her again. More humans meant more danger. If one human was a beast, then many would be monsters. John stood quickly, his body tense. He turned his head toward the sound, then back to Leary. His face hardened, and his hand touched his weapon. Not to aim at her, but to be ready for what was coming. Leary shook her head rapidly, clutching her chest. "No, no, no! They will eat me! Please don't let them eat me!" She didn't know if he understood her words, but John crouched once more and held a finger to his lips, a gesture universal even across stars. "Be quiet." Leary froze, covering her mouth. Her glowing skin dimmed as she tried to hide in the shadows. The soldiers' voices grew louder. They were calling out, their tones sharp and commanding. One voice rang clear. "We found the crash site. Search the area. The alien can't be far." Leary's heart dropped. They were hunting her. John's eyes locked on hers. For a long moment, no words were needed. She saw something in him she did not expect. Choice. He could betray her, call the others, and hand her over. That was what a beast would do. Instead, John whispered low, almost like a growl, "Stay behind me." Leary trembled. She did not fully understand his language, but she understood his body, his stance. He was not going to give her away. He was going to protect her. The other soldiers moved closer. Their flashlights cut through the trees, sweeping the darkness. Leary buried herself against the base of the tree, her tiny body shivering. John stood tall in front of her, blocking the light. His shadow covered her like a shield. For the first time in her life, Leary thought, maybe humans are not all beasts. The beams of light swept through the forest like hungry eyes searching for prey. Leary pressed herself harder against the tree, her tiny body trembling. Her mind screamed, "They will find me. They will eat me. Humans are beasts." But John stood in front of her like a wall. His tall frame blocked the glow of the flashlights, his armor catching faint glimmers of moonlight. He gripped his weapon tightly, but his hand never pointed it at her. Instead, his whole stance said one thing: protection. The other soldiers drew closer, their voices sharp. "Tracks here," one shouted. "Looks fresh. She can't be far," another said. "Orders are clear. Alien must be captured alive. Command wants her tested." Leary's heart stopped. Captured alive? Tested? She didn't know their language, but she could feel the danger in their tone. Her people always warned her. Humans take small creatures. They cut them open. They devour them. Her wide silver eyes stared up at John. He was silent, watching the soldiers approach. For a moment she was certain he would hand her over. He would call out. He would prove he was just like the rest. Desperate, her voice broke into a plea. "Please don't eat me. Please don't eat me." Her words were soft, shaky, almost a whisper, but filled with raw fear. She repeated them again and again, clutching her chest. "Don't eat me. Don't eat me." John looked down at her, confused. He didn't understand the exact words, but her tone was clear enough. She thought he was going to hurt her. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, anger flickered in his eyes, not at her, but at the thought that she was so afraid of him. He crouched, lowering himself close so she could see his face. His voice came out low, steady, almost like a promise. "I won't hurt you. I'm not going to eat you." She tilted her head, tears shining in her glowing eyes. She did not understand the language, but the way he spoke made her pause. His voice did not sound like a beast's growl. It sounded Human. The soldiers were almost upon them now. The crunch of boots and snapping of branches echoed closer. One flashlight beam suddenly brushed over the tree where Leary hid. She gasped, curling into a ball. John moved fast. He shifted his body and stepped forward, blocking the light with his armored form. "John!" a soldier's voice rang out. "You find anything?" Leary held her breath. This was the moment. He would betray her. He would hand her to them. John's voice came back strong and sure. "Negative," he called out. "Nothing here, just animal tracks." The soldiers cursed, disappointed. "Keep searching," one barked. Their lights moved away, fading deeper into the forest. Leary slowly lifted her head, shocked. He had lied, for her. John crouched again, facing her. His rough hand reached out slowly, carefully, as if he was approaching a frightened bird. Leary flinched back, whispering again, "Don't eat me." He sighed, shaking his head. He pointed to himself. "John." Then he pointed at her gently. "Leary." Her silver eyes widened. He remembered her name. He wasn't treating her like prey. He was treating her like someone. For the first time, a fragile thread of hope touched her heart. Maybe this human was different. Maybe he wasn't a beast. But deep inside, she still trembled. What if this is a trick? What if he is only waiting for the right moment? John stood scanning the forest. He extended a hand toward her. His voice was firm but gentle. "Come with me. You'll be safe." She stared at the hand, uncertain. Her people had always told her, never trust a human. Yet tonight, alone in the cold darkness, with hunters all around, his hand looked less like danger and more like survival. Her tiny fingers hovered in the air, shaking. She whispered once more, almost to her, "Self, please, don't eat me." And then slowly she placed her hand in his. The forest slowly grew quiet again as the soldiers' footsteps faded into the distance. Only the sound of night creatures remained, along with the soft rustle of the wind. Leary stood frozen, her tiny hand still resting inside John's large, calloused one. She could feel the warmth of his skin even through the cold air, and it confused her. How can a beast be warm? John looked down at her, his face unreadable. He gently loosened his grip, letting her choose if she wanted to keep holding on or pull away. To his surprise, she didn't let go, not completely. Her silver eyes searched his scarred face. She could not understand his words, but she could feel something in his movements. Care, not hunger. Still, fear clung to her heart like chains. John motioned toward the direction of his camp. He pointed to his chest. "Safe," he said. Then he gestured for her to follow. Leary tilted her head. The word meant nothing to her, but his tone was calm, steady, almost like a promise. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded slightly. She would follow, but only because she had no other choice. They moved through the forest together, quiet and cautious. Every step made Leary flinch, expecting a trap. She imagined sharp teeth, cages, and dark labs where humans cut open aliens. But John kept walking without turning on her. His eyes scanned the trees, not her, as if he was guarding her from dangers she could not see. When they reached a small clearing, John stopped. A temporary shelter stood there, built from metal plates and fabric. A faint fire burned inside a circle of stones, giving the place a fragile warmth against the night. John crouched by the fire, removing pieces of gear from his armor. He set down his weapon but kept it within reach. Then he looked at Leary and gestured for her to come closer. She hesitated, her glowing skin flickering with nervousness. Slowly, she stepped nearer to the fire. The warmth touched her face, and for the first time since her crash, she felt her shivers calm. John opened a small metal container and pulled out more food. Not bread this time, something softer, meat cooked and wrapped in foil. The smell filled the clearing, strong and savory. Leary's stomach twisted with hunger. But fear returned too. Meat. Humans ate meat. What if this is the flesh of another creature like me? Her silver eyes widened and she shook her head quickly, whispering, "No, no." She backed away, clutching her arms tightly. John noticed her reaction and stopped. His brows furrowed in thought. Slowly, he tore off a piece, chewed it, and swallowed. Then he held up his empty hands, showing her he was fine. He even tapped his chest and gave a small nod, as if to say, "See? Safe." Leary blinked, confused. He ate the food himself first. He wasn't trying to poison her. Slowly, carefully, she stepped forward again. When he offered her a small piece, She accepted it with trembling fingers. She sniffed, nibbled, and then chewed. The taste was strange, salty, smoky, but it filled her starving belly with warmth. Her eyes lifted to John. He was watching her, but not like a hunter, more like a guardian. For a moment, her fear loosened its grip. She whispered softly in her own language, "Thank you." John tilted his head, not understanding, but the tone was clear. He gave a small smile, rare on his scarred face. It was the first kindness she had ever known from a human. After the meal, John adjusted the fire, making sure it burned steady. Then he pulled out a spare blanket from his pack. It was rough and too large for her tiny frame, but he draped it gently over her shoulders. Leary's eyes widened again. She looked down at the cloth wrapped around her glowing skin. Blankets are for warmth, not cages. She hugged it tightly, surprised by how soft it felt. Tomed. For the first time since her crash, her body stopped shaking. The fear in her chest was still there, but beneath it, a new feeling stirred, something she had never expected to feel in the presence of a human. Safety. As the fire crackled softly and the night deepened, Leary curled into the blanket. Her eyes remained on John, who sat close by, keeping watch. She whispered to herself one last time before sleep took her. Maybe, not beast. The fire burned low, glowing like tiny stars caught inside the stones. Leary lay curled in the oversized blanket, her small silver eyes half closed. Sleep pulled at her, but fear still whispered inside her mind. She wanted to believe this human, John, was different. But doubts clung to her. What if he is waiting? What if kindness is only a trap? John sat nearby, awake and alert. His hand rested near his weapon, his scarred face turned toward the dark trees. He had the stillness of a soldier who knew danger never slept. Yet every few minutes, his eyes flicked toward Leary, checking if she was warm, if she was breathing steady. The night passed slowly, but when morning arrived, Leary awoke to find John still there. He had not moved away. He had not left her for the other soldiers. He had kept watch the entire night. Her heart gave a small, cautious beat of hope. When the sun rose, John packed his gear quickly, moving with quiet discipline. Then he looked at Leary and pointed toward the forest trail. "We need to go," he said firmly. His tone was serious but not harsh. Leary tilted her head, not understanding his words, but she felt the urgency in his voice. She stood slowly, clutching the blanket around her small frame. They traveled together through the forest. The sounds of distant voices and the echo of machines told Leary the other humans were still searching. Fear returned with every step. She stayed close to John, her tiny feet quick, to match his long strides. Somehow being near him made her feel less exposed. After hours of walking, they reached a hidden place in the hills. John moved aside branches, revealing an old shelter built into the rock. Its metal walls were worn but sturdy. Inside were supplies, food, tools, and a cot. Leary froze at the entrance, her eyes wide. A human den, she thought. Her mind filled with terrible images, cages, chains, sharp tools. She shook her head, stepping back. No, trap. John saw her panic and stopped. He didn't force her inside. Instead, he walked in alone, set his weapon on the wall, and sat down heavily on the cot. He let out a long breath as if to say, "See? Safe." Then he reached into his pack and pulled out another piece of bread. Without a word, he placed it on the ground at the shelter's entrance and leaned back, giving her space to decide. Leary stared at the food. Her hunger gnawed at her. Slowly, carefully, she stepped into the shelter, her bare feet making no sound. She picked up the bread, sniffed it, then sat in the farthest corner, hugging her knees as she ate. John watched but did not move closer. He understood she needed space. For now, she was a frightened bird, and sudden movements might break the fragile trust between them. The day passed quietly. John worked on small repairs in the shelter, his hands steady and skilled. Leary observed him with cautious eyes. She noticed something strange. He never wasted food, never wasted tools, never raised his voice. He was not like the monsters from her people's stories. That night, the cold crept back again. Leary shivered in her corner, clutching the blanket. John noticed but didn't speak. He took off his jacket, folded it, and placed it near her. He didn't push it into her hands. He simply left it close enough for her to choose. For a long time, she did not touch it. Then, when John lay back on the cot and closed his eyes, she slowly reached for the jacket. Its weight and warmth surprised her. She pulled it tightly around herself, whispering softly in her language, "Kindness, not beast." The words echoed in her chest. It was the first time she had said them without fear. As the firelight flickered against the shelter's walls, John slept lightly, one hand near his weapon. Leary remained curled in the jacket, her silver eyes watching him. She still feared him, but deep inside she began to wonder, could this human be my protector? The days in the shelter passed slowly, yet each moment shifted something deep inside Leary. At first, she stayed pressed against the far wall, clutching John's jacket and blanket, her wide silver eyes watching his every move. She expected cruelty. She expected the moment when his mask would fall and he would reveal himself as the beast her elders warned about. But that moment never came. John lived with quiet discipline. He woke at dawn, checked the perimeter, repaired broken tools, and rationed food carefully. He never raised his voice. He never forced her to do anything. He simply lived, steady and predictable. For Leary, who had lost everything, that steadiness felt almost like safety. Still, trust did not come easily. One morning, John tried to hand her a canteen of water. Leary recoiled, shaking her head. "No, trap," she whispered. Her voice was small, fearful. John didn't argue. He unscrewed the cap, drank a long sip himself, then calmly set it beside her before walking away. Leary stared at the CO, entertained her for a long time. Her throat ached with thirst. Finally, when he was no longer watching, she lifted it and drank. The cool liquid slid down her throat, and for the first time in days, she felt truly alive. That night she whispered to herself, "Not poison, not trap." Each day after, John repeated this quiet patience. He offered food, water, warmth, always showing it was safe by taking it first himself. Slowly, the invisible wall between them thinned. One evening, rain hammered against the shelter roof. The storm outside roared like monsters from Leary's nightmares. Thunder shook the ground, and every flash of lightning made her flinch. She curled into a ball, covering her glowing eyes with her hands. John noticed. He didn't touch her, but he dragged his cot closer to her corner, positioning it nearby. Then he leaned back, crossing his arms, pretending to rest. The nearness of his presence calmed her trembling. She peeked through her fingers at him. His face looked tired, but not cruel. She whispered the words again, softer this time. "Not beast." The next day, something changed. While John was fixing the fire, Leary crept closer, curiosity overtaking fear. She crouched near him, silent, watching how his hands moved with tools. He noticed her, but didn't startle. Instead, he handed her a small piece of wood. His gesture was simple. "Help me feed the fire." Leary blinked. He wanted her to help, not as a prisoner, but as a companion. Slowly, she placed the wood into the flames. The fire crackled to life. John gave a small nod of approval. "Good," he said. She didn't understand the word, but she understood his tone. A spark lit inside her chest. For the first time since the crash, she felt useful, not just afraid. Later, John drew simple pictures on the dirt floor. A stick figure of himself, a stick figure of her, a fire, a shelter. He tapped each one, saying the words slowly. John, Leary, fire, home. Leary's eyes widened. She touched the small drawing of herself. "Leary," she said. Then she pointed to him. "John." His rare smile appeared again. She found herself smiling back, nervous, but real. That night, as the firelight glowed against the metal walls, Leary sat closer to John than ever before. Not beside him, but no longer across the room. She wrapped herself in his jacket and whispered softly, "Safe, with John." John didn't know her language, but when he looked at her glowing eyes and saw peace instead of terror, he understood. The fear was not gone, but the first threads of trust had been woven. For several quiet days, Leary and John found a rhythm inside the hidden shelter. She ate when he ate, she drank when he drank, and sometimes she even sat close to the fire while he worked with his tools. The fear was still there, but weaker now, like a shadow fading under sunlight. But shadows always return when danger comes. It began with the distant rumble of machines. One evening, as the sky turned red with sunset, John froze while sharpening his knife. His head tilted, listening. Leary noticed too. The faint hum of engines drifted across the hills. She clutched the blanket around her shoulders, her silver eyes wide. John stood, moving to the shelter's entrance. He scanned the horizon, his body tense. Through the glow of fading light, Leary saw his face harden, the look of a soldier who knew trouble was near. The humans were searching again. Leary's chest tightened. The words of her people screamed in her head. They will capture you. They will cut you open. They will feed on you. She crawled back into the corner, whispering again and again, "Please don't let them eat me. Please." John turned to her, his scarred face firm but calm. "Stay here," he said, his voice steady. He pointed to the ground, then gestured for silence. She didn't know the words, but she understood the meaning. Obey, stay hidden. The noise grew louder. Soon, voices echoed through the hills, harsh, commanding voices, the kind of voices that didn't ask, they ordered. "Sector 4, check the caves. The alien must still be alive. Command wants results. If she resists, bring her in by force." Leary's small hands clamped over her ears. The nightmare was real. They were coming for her. John's jaw clenched. He checked his weapon, loading it with swift precision. The metallic click made Leary flinch. For a terrible second, she feared the weapon would turn on her. But John's eyes were fixed on the outside, not on her. He was preparing to fight for her. The soldiers drew nearer. Flashlights cut through the darkness, sweeping across rocks and trees. Leary's breath came fast and shallow. Her glowing skin betrayed her, lighting up faintly in fear. She tried to press herself deeper into the corner, covering her body with the blanket.
John noticed. He crouched, grabbed a piece of dark cloth, and quickly draped it over her like a shield. "Hide," he whispered. His voice was fierce, protective. She stared up at him, tears welling in her eyes. "Why? Why protect me? Why risk himself?" The footsteps stopped just outside the shelter. Shadows moved across the entrance. "Check in here," a soldier barked. John stepped into the doorway before they could enter, his broad frame blocking the view inside. His voice rang out, firm and commanding. "Nothing in here. Already checked this sector." The soldiers hesitated. One raised his light, trying to peer past John. But John shifted, his hand casually resting near his weapon. His glare was sharp, daring them to challenge him. Finally, the soldier grunted. "Fine. Move on." The voices faded as the search team continued down the hill. Inside the shelter, Leary slowly pulled the blanket from her head. Her tiny body still trembled, but her eyes locked on John. He had stood between her and the monsters. He had lied for her. He had risked his own place among his people. She whispered shakily, "You protect me." John turned, his expression softening for just a moment. "Always," he said quietly. She didn't understand the word, but she understood the look in his eyes. For the first time, her fear broke completely, and in its place, something new began to bloom. The night after the soldiers searched the hills, the shelter no longer felt safe. Leary sat in the corner, hugging the blanket close, her glowing eyes fixed on John. She could still hear the heavy voices in her head, the way they spoke of capture and force. Her body trembled with every memory. John paced the small shelter, his boots scraping against the metal floor. His face was hard, his eyes sharp with thought. He knew the truth. If the soldiers had come this close, it was only a matter of time before they retreated.
Leary's chest tightened in terror. The hunters had seen them. John led her off the path, weaving between trees, pushing through thick brush. The forest grew steeper, the ground uneven, but he kept moving, never letting go of her hand. Bullets cracked through the air, snapping branches nearby. Leary cried out, ducking low, her tiny heart racing. They reached a rocky slope. John pulled her close, pressing her against the stone wall. His body shielded hers as soldiers stormed through the forest below, searching, shouting. For long minutes, the world was filled with chaos, voices, gunfire, engines. Leary pressed her face into John's chest, her whisper muffled. "Please don't let them take me." John tightened his grip around her. His voice came low, fierce, and certain. "They won't." When the soldiers finally passed, silence returned. John exhaled slowly, checking the area before helping her climb higher up the slope. By nightfall, they reached a hidden cave. Inside, the air was damp but safe. John set down their bags and lit a small fire. Leary collapsed near the flames, exhausted. She stared at John, her eyes full of questions. Why does he protect me? Why risk himself for me? John met her gaze. His face was tired, dirty from the chase, but his eyes were steady. He sat beside her, close enough for her to feel his warmth. In that moment, Leary realized something powerful. This human was not her captor. He was her shield. She whispered, almost believing it for the first time. "Safe. With John." The cave was silent except for the faint crackle of fire and the slow rhythm of breathing. Leary sat curled in John's jacket, her glowing eyes reflecting the flames. She was exhausted from running, but her mind refused to rest. Her thoughts circled endlessly. Fear of capture, fear of betrayal, fear of John himself. Yet alongside the fear, something new grew stronger each day. Hope. She watched John as he cleaned his weapon and checked their supplies. His movements were steady, practiced, careful. He looked like a warrior, scarred and strong, but when he glanced at her, his expression softened. He didn't treat her like prey. He treated her like she mattered. Finally, Leary spoke in her quiet voice, though she knew he wouldn't understand. "Why? Why protect me? Humans are beasts, my people. They always said so. You should have left me." John looked up from his work. He didn't catch her words, but he saw the pain in her eyes. Slowly, he set aside the weapon and pointed to himself. "John," he said firmly. Then he pointed to her. "Leary." She nodded weakly. "John, Leary." He placed his hand over his chest. "Friend." The sound meant nothing to her at first, but his gesture, the way he touched his heart, made her pause. She repeated it softly, uncertain. "Friend?" John gave a small nod. His rough face almost smiled. The word echoed inside her. Friend, not beast, not captor. Something else. That night, sleep came heavy. In her dreams, she remembered her people. She saw her mother holding her close, whispering warnings about the monsters called humans. She saw her father pointing at the sky, telling her never to trust them. And then she saw John, standing in front of her, shielding her from soldiers, lying to protect her, offering her warmth. The dream twisted her heart. Who is the monster? Who is the protector? When she woke, dawn light streamed into the cave. John was already awake, standing at the entrance, watching the valley below. His body was tense. Leary crept closer, peeking past him. What she saw made her gasp. Far below in the open fields, soldiers moved like ants, dozens of them, vehicles, weapons, and tents. They were setting up a base. And at the center of the camp stood something worse, a cage, a metal prison ready for someone small. Leary's chest tightened in terror. That cage was for her. She clutched John's sleeve, her silver eyes wide. "They want me. They'll take me." Her voice broke into sobs. "Please, don't let them eat me." John turned, crouching so his eyes met hers. He didn't understand her words, but he understood her fear. He placed a firm hand over his chest again. "Friend, safe." The fire of truth sparked inside her heart. She realized what he had been showing her all along. Humans were not all beasts. Some were cruel, yes. Some were hunters, but not John. John was different. Her elders' warnings echoed again, but she shook her head fiercely, whispering through her tears. "Not beast, not monster. John is human." She touched her own chest, mimicking his gesture. "Friend." For the first time, John smiled fully. It was small and tired, but real. He reached out, not forcing, but offering his hand. Leary hesitated only a moment before placing her tiny glowing hand in his. Her fear melted, replaced with something stronger. Trust. The truth had revealed itself. Humans were not all monsters, and maybe, just maybe, the galaxy had been wrong about them.
The valley below buzzed with human soldiers and their machines. Smoke from their campfires rose into the sky, and the metal cage in the center glimmered under the sun. That prison was meant for Leary, cold, empty, waiting, but in the hidden cave above, Leary sat beside John, her small hands still resting in his. For the first time since her crash, she did not feel like prey. She felt protected. John studied the soldiers below with sharp eyes. He knew they would never stop searching. As long as Leary lived, she was their target. He could return to his unit, pretend he had never found her, and they would reward him. But when he looked at the trembling girl clutching his jacket, he knew he could never do that. Somewhere deep inside, he had already made his choice that he would fight for her. That evening, as the fire burned low, John used sticks and dirt to draw another picture on the ground. A large circle for the camp, small lines for soldiers, and a square for the cage. Then he drew two figures, one tall, one small, standing together on the other side of the mountain. He tapped the figures and said firmly, "John. Leary. Free." Leary's glowing eyes widened. She touched the drawing with her tiny fingers. "Free," she repeated softly. The word tasted new, but beautiful. The next day, they began moving again. Traveling by night, hiding by day, John led her through deep forests, across streams, and over rocky slopes. It was dangerous and exhausting, but every step pulled them farther from the soldiers' base. At first, Leary stumbled often, her small body weak. Each time, John stopped, lifted her gently, and carried her until she had strength again. She would cling to his armor, whispering in her language, "Not beast, protector." One night, after days of running, they reached the edge of the forest. Before them stretched the endless stars, shining over the horizon. For the first time, Leary felt the weight of her fear lift. Out here, away from cages and soldiers, the galaxy seemed wide and full of possibilities. She turned to John, her voice trembling but full of hope. "Friend." John looked at her, tired but steady. "Friend," he repeated, tapping his chest. The bond between them was no longer fragile. It was strong, forged in fear, tested by danger, and sealed by trust, but Leary knew this was only the beginning. She had believed humans were monsters, yet this one had proven otherwise. What if others could too? What if her people had been wrong about the entire species? As the dawn broke, painting the sky with colors, Leary stood beside John on the ridge. She no longer hid behind him, she stood at his side. Together, they looked toward the horizon. For Leary, it was a new world. A new truth. A new bond that had changed everything she thought she knew. She whispered softly, more to herself than him, "Humans, not beasts. Humans can be friends." John didn't understand the words, but he understood the look in her glowing eyes. And in that moment, both of them knew, they were no longer alone. The tiny alien who once cried, "Please don't eat me," had found safety, trust, and friendship with the very creature she feared most. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, destiny had quietly shifted, because one human and one frightened alien had proven a simple truth: sometimes, kindness is stronger than fear.